Today we're going to graph the plot of a story. We're going to use the story of the Three Little Pigs, which you probably know, but I'm going to retell it for you. And as I do this, I want you to think about what the main events are in the story, and then we will rate those for excitement later on the graph. It starts out when the three little pigs have to leave home. Then the first little pig gets some straw to build his house. He builds his house, but the wolf comes along and eats the first little pig after he blows his house down. The second little pig builds his house from sticks, but the wolf again comes along and huffs and puffs and blows the poor little pig's house down and eats pig number 2. The third little pig, who is much wiser than pig number 1 and pig number 2, builds his house out of sturdy bricks. The wolf comes along thinking to have another pig for dinner, but he huffs and puffs and he can't blow that house down. So he decides to trick that little pig by offering him a trip to the turnip field, knowing that the pigs love to eat turnips. That trick doesn't work out. The little pig is too smart for the wolf. So the wolf offers one more trip to the apple orchard. But again, the third little pig outsmarts the wolf. Finally, the wolf offers to take the third little pig to the fair. But the third little pig, once again, is too smart for that wolf. Well, the wolf is so angry, he decides, by hook or by crook, he's going to eat that little pig. So he climbs up that brick house and goes right down the chimney. But the third little pig is waiting for him with a boiling pot of water. The wolf falls in, he covers it up, and eats that wolf. And the third little pig lives happily ever after. All right, now let's think about those events. Let's think about, first of all, when the pig leaves home. Is that a 1 on the excitement scale or a number 10? Let me hear you applaud. If you applaud very lightly, that means it's not real exciting. But if you applaud louder and louder, then I'll know you think that's a real exciting event. So, all 3 little pigs leave home. That's not real exciting. It's important because they have to leave to start the story, but that's not real important. The next event is the first little pig builds his house. All right, that's a little bit more exciting, but not real exciting. Then the wolf comes along and huffs and puffs and blows the pig's house down and eats him. That's pretty exciting. The second little pig builds his house of sticks. That's kind of exciting, about the same as the first little pig. The wolf comes along and blows the second pig's house down and eats him. Then he tries to blow down the house of the third little pig. That's a little more exciting, isn't it? Now he offers to take the pig to the turnip field, but the pig outsmarts him. That's a little more exciting. Then they go to the apple orchard where the pig almost gets caught, but still outsmarts the wolf. Then they go to the fair where the pig meets the wolf on the road and has to be very clever to outsmart him, but he does it. Finally, the wolf jumps down the chimney and we think he's going to get that pig for sure, but he falls in the pot of boiling water. And that went right off the chart, boys and girls. Now, the pig eats the wolf and he lives happily ever after, so that ends the story, and we can start right back down here again. Now we're going to connect the dots, connect the events to create the story and show you what the graph of the plot looks like. You see where it goes up, and it's real exciting here. You notice how the tension mounts. And once again, and then look what's happening here. It gets more exciting and more exciting and more exciting until the very, very most exciting part of the story that we call the climax, and then it has a happy ending, and we all go home very happy. And look at that, and when you are graphing your own stories, your stories should look very similar to this, so that it builds, and it builds, and it should have the most exciting parts right about here. And then it should have a nice ending. Now what I'd like for you to do is take the graph paper that's on your desk, and I would like for you to think about Stone Fox, the story that we've just been reading. What are the important events in this story? Well, the first one is Grandpa gets really sick. And that's real important to the story, isn't it? Little Willie has to find a way to make some money so that he will help Grandpa get well, because he thinks that's why Grandpa's sick. So Little Willie harvests the potatoes with the help of his wonderful, faithful dog, Searchlight. The next thing that happens is the taxman arrives. Now Willie knows that he's got to pay $500 in back taxes. That's why Grandfather was so sick. Little Willie doesn't know what he's going to do, but he hears about a race in town. So he thinks, if I can enter that race and Searchlight and I can win that money, it's $500. It's the same amount of money that he needs to pay for the taxes. So the next important event is that Little Willie takes his $50 that Grandpa had been saving for him out of his college fund, and he enters the race with that. So that is the next important event. His most important opponent is an Indian man named Stone Fox. And he's heard lots of rumors about Stone Fox. That Stone Fox has entered this race and he has never lost the race, ever. So finally, the last important event that you have read about was when Little Willie and Stone Fox met. What I would like for you to do is rate these events and tell me by your graph how exciting you think these events were in the story. Now remember the graph that we just did. What happens? The excitement builds and builds and builds to a climax. So that means that something even more exciting is going to happen. It's going to happen later on. Remember what happened in the Three Little Pigs. So what I would like for you to do, after you have graphed all the events that you know about, I would like for you to predict what is going to happen at the end of the Stone Fox book. All right? Okay, you can begin.